All right, here's that.
Okay. Well, thanks for showing up after lunch. Appreciate you being here. My name's David Cole. I'm a retired senior software engineer. Worked for IBM for 36 years. Retired last year, now I get to do anything I want.
Yeah.
So one of the things I did was, you may have wondered what was up with all the pictures I was showing as you came in that had lots of cyclists and such. I'm the director of a large charity cycling event called the Raven Rock Ramble. And one of the things I did for the event this year was I wrote an app for that event. And what I wanted to talk about today was sort of show you both the externals and the internals of that app. That app uses a lot of geolocation. And so what I want to do is tell you then how I use that, what's under the covers of that, and then some of the hints and tips and gotchas that went along with that. So this presentation is not at the level of detail of some of the others that have been here today. I'm assuming just really a basic understanding of HTML and JavaScript. Here's the technologies I use, and I realize that JQuery Mobile isn't perhaps as new as, say, for example, what the Ionic and other stuff we heard earlier today. But yet it's still out there, it's well established. It's what I use, and I think this may be of good general interest. So my caveats is I developed this in the 2 months prior to the event. I had no app development experience prior to that, although I've certainly written a lot of code over my career. I was very much learning as I went. As a result of all this, I realized that what you see here may not be perfect, but it was ready in time for the event, which counts for a lot. So why even have an app for a cycling event? And what I've discovered, this was my 14th year of running this show, I discovered that really it's an exercise in informational logistics. On the day of the event, I have some 700 people between the volunteers and the participants that need to know a lot of things, not just where to be, but if they're on the course, are they on course or not, how far to the next rest stop. True story, I got a phone call one year. The guy said, I think I missed an arrow and I think I'm off course. I said, okay, where are you? He said, I don't know. Fair question, fair answer. So I thought this could be useful, and originally the problem I wanted to solve was that specific question of where am I? Am I on the course or not? And as I realized that, I realized there's a whole lot more I could do with this. And so that's what I'm going to step you through. Here's what the front end of the app looks like, fairly straightforward. As I said, this uses JQuery Mobile, so this is really just HTML here. Underneath that, we'll see the details of that in a moment. And if you click the top button here, the Get Directions button, what you'll see is first this leftmost screen. And so you have a few choices here. The top two yellow buttons will give you driving direction, give you a map to those locations, then with the option to get driving directions. So that'll give you something such as this, and if you click the Start button, it'll actually give you a specific driving directions, basic Google Maps, which I hope you're familiar with. And then the bottom button there that shows the map with your location, this is the layout of Harris Lake County Park where the event is run. I have the markers here that show the different things, such as where the parking is, where the registration is. If you were actually in the park when you brought this up, you'd see a red pulsing dot that would show your specific location. And if you press on any of those markers, it will tell you more information about those things. The second button, which will show the routes. There are 6 different routes for this event, from 10 to 100 miles. Whichever one you select, it will show you the course for that route. It will show you where all the rest stops are, also called side stops. And then, again, if you were on the route and you press this, you see that same red pulsating dot will show where your location is. If you zoom in, then you can see very quickly if you were on or off the course and which way back to it. The third button, if you would hit the Request Help, I actually debated adding this for a while, because what I didn't want to happen is for the ride to start, it starts to rain, and all of a sudden I've got 625 people calling for help all at once. And I thought, well, if they're going to call for help, I may as well make it easy for them. And so the top two yellow buttons, you may, in case the difference between the yellow buttons and the blue buttons, the yellow buttons take you outside of the app to something else. The blue buttons keep you inside of the app. But top two buttons either call or text me, the director, or you can report your location. That brings up this middle screen. And what this will do, you can send it either to me or to whomever you may want, your spouse, if he or she is waiting at the park for you. And when you click send, then you get this write notice. And what that does is it composes a text message, as you see, that says, hey, at this time, at this date, I'm at this location. That's simply a Google Maps link. And when they send that, if I receive it, if I click the link, it brings up a Google map. I see exactly where they are. I can then in turn forward that either through text or email to any of my support staff if they need mechanical help or need to be picked up or whatever. So that very quickly and easily addresses some of these problems I was mentioning to you, folks simply wondering where are they and how do they get help if they need it. Then the 4 volunteers, this proved to be much more useful than I was expecting. It was almost an afterthought when I added it. The top one is a drop-down list, same kind of thing. It'll give them driving directions to the destinations where they need to be. As they arrive there or as they leave, they can simply press that button. It'll send me a text message. The code can figure out which one they're closest to, let me know which stop they're either arriving at or departing from. And then same as the call or text before, that's a drop-down list. They can contact any of the other volunteers. So I may have people at one rest stop need to know where the mechanic is, call them or text them right away without having to look anything up. Now, I want to go back one thing. One of the things I've discovered is, again, this is back to the question of why you write an app for a cycling event. What I've discovered is there is a lot of information that folks need to know, but even if you meticulously document this on your website, they won't read it. What people typically want is they want the information that they need when they need it. And writing the app then let me do that. If they install the app, then they've got it right when they need it. Okay, so let's dig a little bit more under the covers. This is really basic organization, nothing particularly fancy here, except I do have the custom markers I created and the KML files. I'll talk about those more in detail. I was using JQuery Mobile for this. You may or may not be familiar with it, but essentially it just gives you a JavaScript and CSS wrapper so that all you need to do within your HTML is just add some extra attributes to what are typically existing tags, and you've got touch screen functionality, a nice app look and feel, or a mobile look and feel. So once again, here's the main page, or the front screen, if you will. And then here's the HTML that goes behind it. This is the entire HTML for that front page. What you see outlined here in red is simply the buttons. And like I mentioned, all I'm really adding here, this data role equals button, that's the JQuery Mobile directives there. So it's with that, and you include, of course, the JQuery Mobile JavaScript source. It gives you all this with very minimal effort. So I realize that folks watching this online that may not have as much experience as some of the folks here, but if you're interested in creating a web app, this is actually pretty easy and works pretty well. So if you paid attention when I showed you the externals there, there really are 3 types of geolocation that I use here in increasing order of complexity. One is simply opening the Google app in a Google in the Maps app. The next is sending the text to the Google Maps link. And the third and the most complex is within the app displaying a map that has all the markers, has the routes, effectively has multiple layers. So what I want to do is just go through and each one of these and describe them in a little more detail. If you have questions as we go on, feel free to ask too. Okay, so opening a Google map in the Maps app, such as what you see here, is really as simple as composing your anchor link. In this case, this is to a static destination from whatever your current location is. And so that is really all that there is to it. You simply list your destination and source, and like I say, the data role is the JQuery Mobile app attribute, and that's enough to give you that function right there. So that part was pretty easy and quick. If you're going to send a text with a Google Maps link, well, composing a text and sending it through your messenger is easy enough. Similar kind of thing. It's just an anchor link. You have the SMS prefix here with the number you want it to go to, and then you have whatever text you want to be sent. So the to-do for this function is composing that text that creates the link that has your particular coordinates in it. Were a couple of gotchas here. iOS and Android use different SMS separators, and iOS and Android have different expectations about the inclusion of blanks or not within that text. So sending the text, first part, here's the anchor link. All that does is invoke the JavaScript function. Here's the JavaScript function. You can see what it does is basically compose that SMS text. It presumes the existence of this current position global variable. So you can see that, okay, this is composing that link, and you can see here, I have to test to see if it's iOS or not, and if it is, I have to encode the URI, if not, I don't. In terms of getting that current position, that's this function, and I hope you're familiar enough with JavaScript to be familiar with its syntax, but this down here is where we call the get current position. It gets that current position. If that function is successful, then we save that variable here, the current position variable, and if it fails, then we give the appropriate alert. One of the things I discovered is there's lots and lots of examples when you search online for creating maps, but almost all of them are for standard web pages. Relatively few of the examples were for jQuery Mobile. And the difference is that there are different events that you trigger on. When you're creating a web app, instead of a standard web page, actually has lots of pages behind it. So we have your index.html up front, and any links you to will typically go to separate pages. With a web app, everything is all within your index.html file, and then your internal links are just different targets within that. Consequently, when you want to trigger an event on the load. Well, it's not the load for the index.html, but that happens right up front. You have to capture the load for those different targets, and that's where you see here. So it's on the page so event of this particular target. We'll set the current position for me so it's ready when I need it. Now the third one here, and this, like I say, this is much more complex, is creating a map that has all this different information in it. And so we start out pretty much the same. Now here's the HTML section for that. Up front, we simply have our initial anchor that if you press the button, in this case for the 100-mile route, it takes you to this section. And here it's pretty straightforward. We've got the header, we've got the header information, and then this section here, that's the content of that page. And really all it is identifying the canvas. And the canvas is what's going to get populated by Google Maps. So this part is pretty straightforward, or pretty simple anyway. So then how do you populate that canvas? Well, same kind of thing on the page. So for that particular section, we do three things. First, we create the map, then we add the Kml layer, and then we add the marker. So the top section here is where first we identify the options for the map, and then here's where we actually create the map using those options, and here's where we identify the map canvas for where we want to go. Once we've done that, then we add the layer here, and this is a specific, has to be a specific URL that is externally accessible by the Google Maps API. Now, as a consequence, this means that you can't fully download your web app to your phone and have it work offline because you still have to have the internet connectivity. both to connect to Google Maps and for Google Maps to connect back to the Kml. And then this is just the very simple code to add a static marker. Now the code I have has a lot of code behind that that will actually make the marker pulse, and then we'll update the position of the marker. I didn't add that for this presentation, A, because it's a lot more complex, and B, because I'm planning on rewriting it, and I'll get the reasons why in a little bit. But this creates the map, adds the Kml layer, and then adds the marker. So now let's talk about the Kml layer and what's involved in making that. Oh, here, I'm sorry, here's the, in terms of getting the current location, this is similar to what we saw before. In fact, let me go back here. Yes, using the, yeah, same, very similar to what we saw in terms before, in terms of getting the current location and such. Okay, so here's a KML. KML stands for Keyhole Markup Language. If you've done much work with Google Earth, you probably have seen this. Google Earth is sort of your standard way of creating KML files. I quickly found it would not work for what I wanted to use it for. In fact, I found my best bet was to hand code my KML files, and I'll explain why. KML, you can almost think of this as very kind of CSS-like. Up at the front, you're just identifying some books, identifying some different styles. And not here, there we are. So I'm going to identify a style for a black line, a style for an icon. I have a description here. And the description, if you notice those markers, if you press on the marker, it will display this description in the alert box. Now you can also add contents to a map through JavaScript. I could never get the description for a JavaScript added marker to display. I don't know if that was just me or it was something in limit. It would display when I added the Kml layer, so I just add all of these as part of the Kml layer. And then once you define your styles, then you do, I'm doing two things here. Here's when I'm creating the line. That's the route. You may have seen the black route. And you have a string of coordinates here. And I have this dot, 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 because this is a long, 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 long string of coordinates that shows all the course that's there. And I have a place mark here, in this case, for the beginning of the route. And this is just a very specific coordinate. So the reason I decided to hand code these is that it just gave me a lot more control over what the end result looks like. And once I was able to familiarize myself with what the KML syntax was, it's really just XML. It wasn't that difficult once you play around with it a little bit. However, this begs the question of how do you get the coordinates, because that's kind of the hard part here. So there's two. When you just need a single spot coordinate, the far and away the easiest way is to bring up Google Maps, zoom in to the point you want, right-click, and you'll see the what's here. If you click that, then you get your coordinates for that point. However, notice here it's like 35 and then 78. If I go back here, what's needed in the KML file is the 78 and then the 35. So the latitude and longitude are reversed between what, it's just an annoyance. You can't cut and paste straight from what Google Maps, or what Google Maps tell you into the KML. You have to reverse the latitude and longitude. But that's the easiest way to get the point that I found. For the actual route, I started playing with Google Earth to see if I could get that behavior I wanted to. And if I went dot by dot, I could draw a line. What I really wanted to do is say from here to here, I'm going to take this road. And if you didn't draw what I wanted, I could drag it over. But again, the way you can in Google Maps. There's a website called bikely.com. They got bought out by Bike Radar. It will let you do that function, create a route very easily. And then they have this download KML file that gives you all of those coordinates. Gives you a lot of other stuff too, but if you dig into it, you can see that coordinates list. I literally cut and paste that from here, from Bikely into my hand-edited KML, and boom, I have what I wanted. So once I figured out I could do that, I go, this actually is pretty easy. I don't have to depend on Google Earth. I have to use Google Earth for what would would be a cumbersome process in that case. So as a result, you can end up with a map that looks like this. Here you can see the little red pulsing dot I had up at the top. If you press any of the markers, you get information about that marker. And this proved to be very useful. People were sending me notes even well after the event, where even they were like riding it just out in the course solo, and they realized they could see again very easily if they were on or off the course. All right, so some of the gotchas here. As I mentioned, there are relatively few examples that I found that were specific for jQuery Mobile, so I had to interpret what was there into my own environment. As I mentioned, iOS and Android can be weirdly different, so you really have to test on both. There were some functions I never got working on Android, and so on my website I said, I had a known restrictions page. I said, yeah, I know some of this doesn't work, but I don't have time to fix it. Also, could I never get the splash screens to work for whatever reason, or if they did work, it was after the whole app loaded, you see the splash screen for a fraction of a second and you have the app. So that's an area where I know I need to fix. I used get current position as I was playing with the app here recently in preparation for this presentation. I'm now getting warning messages when I run it on Chrome that's been deprecated from an unsecure environment. So I either need to make the website secure, that is HTTPS, or look at possible alternatives. One of the things that happens too is when you create your map and then you add the Kml layer, the map will reposition based on the center of the Kml layer. And that has the effect of drawing the map twice. And so it took a little bit of effort. I added some code once I loaded the Kml layer to echo the center point of that, so that when I do the first map, I would use that same center point. Otherwise, you'd see something, the whole thing would shift, and then you see something else. And now at least you'll see the map, and then you see the layer if you're on top of that without the map underneath it seeming to shift or move. Another thing is, even though I publicize this app, again, this is for a very specific audience. It's for the participants and the volunteers for this event. Based on the survey feedback I got, only about a quarter of them actually used it. Now, a lot of them have ridden the event before. They said, oh, I know the routes. I can do this fine without that. But I like to think this has so much more to offer that really could be useful for them to have. So this feeds into, what am I going to do next? But before I get there, whenever you're setting out to do development, whether you're an individual like me or especially as a company, you want to build versus buy. You want to develop it yourself and just get something that's off the shelf, maybe free or maybe not. In this case, there's several other apps now out there that do similar kind of stuff that I think I really sort of want to partner with rather than replicate. So for example, Ride with GPS is a site that has some very good function. If you draw your route on their site and distribute the URL for that, anyone who does that, if they download the Ride with GPS app, it lets them do several things. It will let them see the course. It will show them their location on the course. At least there's an option for that. I didn't get that to work for me. But more importantly, if you get their premier version, it will give you the turn-by-turn instructions. So I did get some feedback that, hey, can you give me turn-by-turn instructions? Well, that's a fair amount of work, and I'm doing this for free, right? So I think what I'm going to do, rather than try and create all that myself, with that piece, I want to leverage what Ride with GPS has. Another function I was thinking of is I want to be able for people to see, other people to see where you are on the route. And so on the one hand, I have that position where you can text them, or the function where you can text them your position, but I'm not broadcasting your position. There's some privacy issues that come into play with that. Glimpse is a wonderful, wonderful app if you want to let people know where you are. If you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to check it out, because it handles the privacy, it handles the duration with which you're broadcasting, and it's very useful if you're going somewhere, you want to let some people know that you're on your way, and they can see exactly where you are up until the point in time to get there. And then Find My Friends has a function I've also been contemplating, and there's a lot of time you're not riding by yourself, you're riding with your friends or with a team, So the question isn't just where you are, but where are they? Because if you get separated and you don't know who's ahead and who's behind, you can get even further separated. The people who are slowing down thinking they're in front, and people are speeding up, they think they're behind, and I've seen that happen before. Again, that gets more complex, privacy issues with if you're broadcasting position. Also battery drain issues, because if I'm constantly broadcasting position, if you're running 100 miles, you're out there for 6 or 7 hours, your battery may well not last. So, what I plan to do for the next go around, I do want to use PhoneGap or Cordova now to make this available through the app stores. Even though there would be no difference in the underlying function, people are used to getting it through app stores. The downside of that is it also means they're going to have to manually initiate an update. I can't just push out new code onto the web server and have them pick that up. One of the things after I wrote this, I go, no! Why didn't I add a donate button to the top of the end? So they like this so much. Well, why don't I let them show that appreciation? Also a register button now that I'll be opening registration next month. And then even on the route, I want to make it more specific. So and I can do this because it's easy enough to, and there's an API that says, tell me the distance between 2 points. I can take the current location, kind of scan through that array of points on the route and see where you're closest to, and then issue a message box that says either you're off the course by X distance, or you're on the course at this mile marker, and therefore you have this distance remaining to get to the next hangstone. Because that's another question that folks have. They say, man, I'm dying out here, but I'm going to get something to eat and drink. So this way I can make them explicit rather than having them seeing on a map and having to guess how far that is. Oh, let's see. Also, this pulsating marker, I use timers both for the pulse and then to update the position. What I realize now is that CSS is sophisticated enough. You can do the pulse straight within CSS. And rather than automatically moving that marker, again, that gets potential to battery drain issues. I want to add a refresh button so people can see, oh, I just now show me where I am now, if they happen to just open that page on the app. What I found also is, because I didn't want to drain the battery, I didn't want to be setting the current location every second. I was doing like every 10 seconds. Well, it means to pull it up, it may be 10 seconds before you see your current location. If you're not patient enough to see that, then you think you're somewhere else rather than where you are. And then I'm going to create a video to add to the website that says, oh, not only is there app here, in 40 seconds I'll show you what it does, and hopefully get a little bit better use from the riders. And then for those other apps that I mentioned, either advertise those explicitly or even including the app that says, if you want this function, go ahead and load this app. I think that'll give me a good whole environment of apps, not just mine, but a collection. It will add significant function.
Would you be able to just push a button and switch to that app with that course, or?
I haven't decided how I'm going to do that yet. I may have like a related apps button. You press that, and it will show those. And if you press that, if you select, say, the lamps, then it would take you to that app store to let you download it. It's like I can simplify it. So I can see different levels of implementation. All of that, it's a simple matter of programming, right? but also it's a matter of how much stuff I want to do. I'm not getting paid for this or anything, but it's something that I enjoy working with. If you're just starting out, these are the resources I used in addition to, of course, Stack Overflow. Again, I had a long career with IBM, did a lot of programming. My web skills really were all HTML4 based. So this top book I found very useful because it's targeted at software engineers. So it's not going to tell you what a do loop looks like. It's going to jump right in and tell you, here's what's new and different about these particular things. And the JQuery Mobile book at the bottom is very helpful too for what I need. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you in terms of the upcoming features for 2016. obviously, cell phone signal and strength is a consideration, and I was just curious if you had encountered any types of local caching that could be used for caching certain components of the map.
Right, I do local caching,
Yeah.
and so some of that function would still work. I mean, certainly where you're texting the different people, or where you're, well, again, depending on your cell phone signal strength. Fortunately for me, Verizon fully covers that portion, and everyone has Verizon. The challenge with the GPS, if you're trying to get the Google map, you've got to have the connectivity to the Google Maps API.
And then the other question I wanted to ask was whether you had encountered any, whether you had to adhere to the Google Maps API TLS in order to implement this, whether there were any actual direct calls from your app that needed you to sign up with Google in order to receive those services, or are you able to just use the links straight through?
I was just able to use the link straight as they were. So that hasn't yet been an issue. I don't know that it would be.
Yeah, you can get enough traffic in the API.
Yeah, that's my
but
understanding.
You can use that free for quite a bit. The only sort of real gotcha is if you put your app and your site behind a login or behind like a paywall. As long as it's open and anyone can use it, you're good to use it for free, no problem.
I think one restriction I have is when you put the map on the campus, it comes with a link to Google. And the way you set up the controls, you have like top left, bottom right, bottom left, and it comes up on one side of the screen. And when I'm testing my app, I'll sometimes actually click that link to Google, and it brings me out of the app, and I don't know any way to come back. And they said that if you want to use our app, you can't, stop that link from coming to Google. You can't cover it up. You have to leave it where it is and leave it visible. So
that is one of the frustrations I have too. Even, and again, on the website, if I want people to read it, I explain how to do this. But for those yellow links that take you to other apps, whether it's texting or phoning or the Maps app, that means it's taking you out away from my app, and there's not an easy way to, I don't know how to open those apps and also add a done key, so when it's finished, it'll take you back to where you are. But yeah, I can see how that would happen. If that's there and they happen to hit it, now they're, boom, what happened to your
well,
whole
see on Android, they have the hardware back button, which kind of looks
Tricky.
cool, but on iOS, you're out.
Yeah.
With iOS 9, there's now, and I don't know if this would work with the HTML5 app, but there's now a back to the last app that you used to launch that app.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, it's a small link in the upper left-hand corner, but it's only on iOS 9 now. Anything less, you don't have that access.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I'll check that out.
Not that I would try to push you to a different framework at all, but you talked about the update problem of packaging in its own gap. There may be something like this for jQuery Mobile, but I know that with Ionic, they have the ability to push updates to it without them having to update the app, because both of the platforms consider JavaScript and HTML and stuff just to be assets as opposed to runnable stuff, so they can just push assets. So every time they open it, they can push the assets and have that app updated to the latest version. There may be something like that for jQuery Mobile, so even if you bundle it up, they would get the latest version of the assets. And
Yeah, I was also going to upgrade the latest version of everything, but I was going to look at Ionic as well, just based on how I've heard here earlier today.
yeah, but that way you don't have, they don't have to do any updates, and it will just pull down the latest versions of the files every time you open it.
I also have the luxury of more time this get around, so I hopefully can get it right before it's ready to publish.
Is the app open source?
It's yes and no.
Okay.
It's
I
not.
was just gonna say for the SSL for HTTPS, if it's open source, you can get a free certificate and you can get all set up with HTTPS really simply.
Okay.
But if it's not, it'll cost a little money.
What's the name of the consortium that's sponsoring that now?
Well, that is, you go through GoDaddy or a few others, but Let's Encrypt is a new group that's out. They're still in beta, so they're not available, but supposedly even for commercial proprietary apps, they will have free certificates sometime maybe next year. That's another option.